Hey guys, welcome to Creative Plays podcast. Today I've got some special guests here. This is Eve, and her owner, Coreena Breazeale, is here from Revive K9. We're going to talk about some great things, disabilities and challenges in the workplace, and we're also going to dive a little bit into just awareness in general. So I hope you really enjoy this conversation. Stay tuned. Hey, Coreena,
Hi
welcome to
there.
Creative Plays podcast. And this is Eve. We're so glad to have you here, Eve.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
How are
Don't let her deceive you. She's trouble.
you? She's like, I'm good right now, but in just a minute, I'm going to get really curious. Thanks for coming, Eve. Well, I'm so
Absolutely.
glad you got to join us today. And I want to dive right in because I know we have a lot to cover. And so I'd like to hear a little bit more about Revive Canine. As founder, I know this is your baby, this is your passion, and you have other projects you're working on too. But just tell us a little bit about your background, Revive Canine, and what you're doing there. And then kind of what you see in the future a little bit, and then we'll dive more into that later too.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Coreena Breazeale. I own Revive Canine Dog Training. It is a business that started actually kind of out of desperation because we went into COVID and the business that I was working for previously closed down. So I was like, well, 6 months into COVID, I guess I'm figuring out how to start a business and run it because I don't know what else to do. We were still in lockdown, and so I had a lot of time to sit down and dive into website design and everything that goes into running a business.
Wow. So many
And
people had to do that
I
during
know, I
COVID.
know, they really did. And one thing led to another. I ended up creating a following, and people would tell all of their friends about the training services, and we specialize in basic obedience. I had started before Revive. I was getting into service dog work with a local organization. I was
Nice.
actually a puppy raiser for them for 2 years, and
Wait, a puppy raiser.
a
That
puppy
means you have
raiser.
to get them a certain point and then hand them over. I don't know how you can like hand
Yes.
them over.
So a puppy raiser is an individual that essentially brings in a puppy into their house that's assigned to them from an organization. And for this organization, they gave me an Australian Shepherd. At the time, his name was Bootsy. About a year in, they decided that he wasn't the right fit for the program, and so they asked if I wanted to keep him. And so I was like, yes. He's been with me for a year. He went to school. He did all of the public access things. He was about the same age as Eve here, and so I got to keep him, and he's been with me my whole career. He turns 10 next month, so
Nice. He's OG.
he is.
I
He
love
is.
it.
But Revive ended up going from it just being me to me being like, holy moly, I need help. And so somebody ended up coming forward that I had met at a training, a training for trainers. And I ended up hiring her, and she now runs my Pensacola location, and she's killing it. She's excellent at what she does.
Awesome.
Has created a whole team, and I moved down here, and we have our team here, and it's been quite the journey. I've learned a lot and met a lot of amazing people, and I would have never thought that dog training would have, put me in a space with a podcast with somebody that does the amazing things that you do. So,
Oh, you're so sweet.
absolutely.
I know, and I'm sure some of our guests will think, well, what really does this have to do with this podcast? And there's so many different aspects of what you do that absolutely parlay into, just into space and design. And I'm curious, like as a business owner, what do you think COVID did? Because you ramped up right during COVID. Do you think that that was actually a good thing for the business? And part the reason I'm asking, a lot more people got pets. There was definitely a change in like your home culture, that was happening. So how do you think that affected the business and like starting a business at that time? What do you think that did in a
Well,
good
it
way
was
or
great for us
yeah.
because people learned that their dogs were driving them crazy. So they needed help. And we offered a board and train program. So people, when we were still doing the 6 feet distance, they would come up to the house and drop their dog off, and we would put them through board and train for the duration of their program, and then we would do videos, and so a lot of it was completely hands off. And so we'd follow up virtually, being able to teach these individual families how to continue with training, because just like with anything else, if you don't use it, you lose it. It's very easy for dogs to revert back to their old ways when there's not a specific level of consistency carried over into the home.
Yeah.
So for
You gotta
us, it was
practice,
great.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For the rescue world, it was great as well for a little while. People were going and adopting dogs. I mean, it cleared the shelters. Dogs were in homes and they were happy. But then everything started to slow down. People were going back to work and working their full days, realizing that this wasn't sustainable for them. And so dogs ended up going back into rescue, and now we have an overpopulation issue. There's a lot of aspects in ways there were a lot of great ways that COVID benefited the workplace, and being able to get back to finding hobbies and enjoying your day, not the 9 to 5 grind and commuting and all of that. So there were a lot of changes.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And there's still a lot of changes happening, I think. And hopefully part of what you can do is kind of mitigate some of those before somebody says, oh no, we're just going to take them back to the shelter. Hopefully you're able to get in there and, kind of say, well, here's some training things we can do, or, be encouraging for that so that they can maybe manage, having that dog at home when they're not there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, dogs are den animals. They are okay sleeping. I think a puppy sleeps 20 hours a day, so she definitely sleeps 20 hours a
she's
day. I
out.
mean, she's out already. But for the most part, dogs are completely okay sleeping throughout the day. There's a lot of human emotion that goes into, I feel guilty because I'm not home. I come home, do the night routine, and then have to start over again the next day. So there's a lot of guilt behind having the dog in home, and just trying to navigate, okay, well, it worked when we were in COVID and now it's changed.
Yeah.
So
And you think a lot of it's the human piece of it versus the dog, because
I would say all of
unnecessary
it
anxiety.
is the human side of the leash determines everything.
True.
So if the human side of the leash isn't, consistent, or is allows the dog to do what they want, those behaviors are going to continue.
True.
So the human side of the leash determines everything.
The human side of the lease is always determining everything.
It does.
And that's probably where a lot of the problems come from. And I'm sure that's another topic.
It is. I mean, it's just like with kids. Dogs and kids are very similar in the fact that kids know what they can get away with, dogs know what they can get away with too. So it's all about being consistent and showing the dog or the kid what is right and what is wrong. And if you don't show them, then they're never going to know. So they're going to make up their own things and give themselves their own jobs, like eating the couch.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's a good point. I think it's a good point. I think, it's great to have that reminder too, that they are den animals, and that sometimes, and I'm not saying that, you should have more flexibility in your work. And that's one of the things that we, talk about a lot on this podcast is, the future of work and schedules and all. And I think one thing to remember is, yeah, we all are kind of going after this balance, and a lot of times dogs, cats, kind of factor into that balance and that quality of life, but also just remind yourself that it's okay that they stay home and sleep all day for those couple of days you need to go in the office. They're going to be fine. It's how you're handling them when you're at home. So that's a good reminder, I think, because there are a lot of people that have the self-imposed guilt, for,
Right.
I got to go back to work. What's my dog going to do? It's going to die without me for the day. It's going to be okay, I think.
Right. And I mean, the alternative is a concrete kennel.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think they're doing okay in your
if
bed.
they have your couch or even just a kennel at the house, they're so happy with that, because the alternative is less than ideal.
Yeah, and then they get to welcome you when you come home. So that's
Exactly. And I mean, they're so helpful. There's so many benefits to having a dog in your life, whether they're there to welcome you or they're there to help you.
Yeah.
So there's so many different things that we can gain by having dogs at our side, and whether it's just a pet or whether it's a service dog or whatever the situation is for that particular family.
Right. And you are developing, and tell us some more about that, getting more into the service dog training arena. So what I'm intrigued by is, what does that, how do the dogs actually help? Because I think a lot of people don't understand really what the role is,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of, different definitions and understandings, and I think expectations that people hear around the term service dog. And I'm very interested in it for, folks with disabilities, and how that helps them, normalize, not normalize, but kind of do more with their life that they maybe couldn't do without that assistance, getting back into the workforce, getting in
Right.
the workplace. So I would love to know, and just kind of some overview about how these dogs, how these wonderful beings actually do help, in the service capacity, and I know
Right.
there's a myriad of different ways. So if you want to kind of just give
Yeah,
us an overview and
that is that's
it's a
a
loaded
big
question.
feat to explain, but service dogs, the topic alone is something that's very controversial in itself.
Yeah,
Some people agree with it and some people don't. But the people that typically don't agree with it don't necessarily understand what it actually is that these dogs are capable of,
sure.
because it's an exploited system. It is something that people have been educated, right? Educated incorrectly, that they can go and purchase these different certifications, which it's just a piece of paper. Essentially, you're wasting your money, because there is no law that requires any sort of certification. You can self-train your dog. You don't have to have a professional come in and train your service dog. You can do it yourself. The dogs don't have to wear a vest. They don't have to wear a collar. They don't need to have any sort of identification. The regulating organization is the ADA, right? So the
Right.
ADA allows for individuals that have disabilities to get the accommodations that they need, right? To make sure that they can be successful in whatever it is that they're doing. Service dog falls under that. So with a service dog, these animals, once they're trained, so on the handler side, the ADA covers the handler side, but also covers the handler under employment, right?
Okay.
So your handler side, you're able to take your service dog into any public place that the public is openly allowed to go into. So malls, schools, hospitals, these are places that when your dog is specifically trained to help you, that you're able to go into. If you're allowed to go into the space, your dog's allowed to go with you, because it is technically a medical device.
Gotcha.
It is there to assist you, right?
Yeah.
So the purpose of a service dog is to help mitigate the disabilities of their handler. And so they are specifically trained, and they have to have an impeccable obedience. It's not just a dog that you see that's got the service dog vest walking through the grocery store barking at everybody, right? Or in the grocery cart, whatever it is that people are doing now, like, that's not what a service dog is at all. A service dog is a very well-trained, high-performing animal that is able to detect seizures. Like, we can train them to detect the chemical imbalance inside of your body with their nose, right? That olfactory system is 100,000 times more is stronger than what ours is. Yeah. Like, they can detect literally the smallest thing and let their handler know, like, hey, you need to sit down. If a seizure is coming, I need you to sit down, because you need to be safe. You're about to not be safe in a minute, right? And it's not just epilepsy, it's mobility. Somebody that's in a wheelchair, if they have a hard time picking things up off the ground, we can teach the dog to retrieve the things up off the ground. Somebody with PTSD or another type of anxiety disorder, teaching the dog that the handler needs to take a medication at a certain time of day. And so being able to teach the dog to alert the human and even go and get the medication to remind them. So there's so many different things that these animals can help with, and it doesn't always have to be visible. Just because somebody has a service dog and they're not in a wheelchair doesn't mean they don't need the service dog. So there's a lot of education that needs to go in behind that in itself, to teach the general public that just because you see a dog with a person doesn't mean that person, doesn't need that assistance.
Right. I appreciate that. I think there's, I know that there's a lot of nuances to it as well. What would you say to those folks that are insisting on, the service dog, let me just get the vest and the certificate, and, kind of take them just so they can take them with me. And I know there's a lot of those too.
Right.
Is there a gray area somewhere in there where somebody legitimately feels like it's an emotional, assistance for them or helps with their
Right.
anxiety or something? And so what you're saying is they don't necessarily have to go and do the things that people are doing, like these outward, show
Right.
of
Yeah.
certifications.
It is something that you should speak with your doctor about. Emotional support is not a task. It's not a task that helps with a disability, right?
Okay.
A task for somebody with anxiety would be something like deep pressure therapy. So the dog gets on your chest and that pressure, it emulates a hug, right? And it's the same chemicals that go through your body and it makes you feel better. So if you're having a panic attack or you're on the verge of a panic attack and your dog knows how to do deep pressure therapy, then they can go ahead and do that. And it is emotional support, but it's also helping to lessen or mitigate the disability or the issue that you're experiencing in that moment. So
Yeah.
there are ways around it that the people that want to be able to take their dogs everywhere, there are things that can be taught, but at the same time that your dog needs to have a very, very high level of basic obedience and be able to generalize that basic obedience across settings, right? Being able to go to the coffee shop and not act a fool, being able to go to the airport, being able to go to any place that you're going to go to and basically be seen, not heard.
Right.
The best way I can explain it is when you have a service dog, you basically want a living teddy bear because there's a lot of liability that goes into it too. As a
Sure.
handler, if your dog bites somebody, like that's on you. Like there's a lot that goes into that. So it's not something to be taken lightly. The people that are exploiting the system and getting these certifications online are making it harder for the people that are putting in the time to do it the right way. So, and it's going to be something that's cracked down on, and it's going to be, you know, an opportunity that gets taken away because it's being used.
Yeah, it's being exploited. I
Exactly.
can see that. And um, yeah, it's not a great situation. And it does, it's detrimental to the folks that really, legitimately need to, have the service dog, as them. I think that's really interesting, that you clarify that it is like a medical device, and if you're
Yes.
kind of making that distinction or it's a method or a procedure, that's very specific, like the deep, tissue. Um, I think that's really good to know. And I think it is a lot of just the education on that. And so that's, part of what we want to talk about too is, that translates into the workplace too, and really in the community, like you mentioned, like going to coffee shops and stuff. And, while we focus a lot on, how can we create spaces, it's work, live, and thrive. So it's not just, these general places, but, we kind of want to focus on the workplace.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that you're combating right now as you get back in, to the service training and the foundation that you're working on is that you want to be able to empower kids as they're growing up and then as they get into adulthood to be able to be independent, right, to be able to get back into the workforce, to be able to go support themselves or at least have some semblance of independence, right. And there's so many different ways the dogs can help that, so I think that's really fascinating. And then as you look at it coming back into the workplace, I'd love to talk about a little bit, because there's some challenges there. There's stigmas, there's misinformation, there's not the proper education too, so as we think about, employees, and there's a lot more awareness around neurodiversity today, which
Right.
I'm sure is great for you and what you're working through. I think you mentioned to me some staggering, statistic of how many people are now being diagnosed with autism. Like it's expounding it, or it's exponentially, growing
Right.
at a rapid rate. And I think that's kind of scary,
Yeah.
just because the education and the awareness around it is not there,
Right.
and so as we have so many more people that are coming in, to that, kind of that stage, and trying to figure out where do we go from here, we need to get busy. I think we need to get busy on education and awareness, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but what do you think are some ways, just kind of off the bat, like what are some challenges that you're seeing in the workplace and in the community in general that's making you go, hang on a second, we need to make some changes here?
Absolutely.
What are you
Well,
addressing?
legally, you're only allowed to ask if you enter a public place and you have your service dog. There are only two questions that people are allowed to ask you when you enter that space. Is that a service dog, and what tasks does it perform? That's it. That's all they're allowed to ask. If they ask anything more than that, the person that's asking potentially could be in a lot of trouble, because that is impeding on somebody's individual, disabilities and experience. You're not allowed to go and ask what's wrong with you.
Right.
Why would you need a service dog? Like, what is this dog actually? People are very rude. And when it comes down to the fact that they don't know, they, and I've experienced myself, and this is actually one of the reasons why I stepped away from service dog training when I first started, was I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for this battle. I at one point I went into a firehouse sub shop with my dog Boots, and he was 5 months old at the time, so he was a service dog in training. Service dogs in training, just so that each state has its own laws that allow a service dog in training to go into public places and that sort of thing. Each state is a little bit different. So when it comes to looking up what the laws are within your state, you do have to make sure that you're well versed in that, because service dog in training doesn't get the same rights federally as a service dog that has finished training, right? That is ready to be a service dog. So two different types of situations. But in Florida, we are allowed to take a service dog in training anywhere that a service dog would be allowed to go.
Okay.
So I went into this firehouse, and the manager yelled at me and said, that dog's not allowed to be in here. You need to get out. And so I turned around and I told him, like, according to the ADA, and I spouted off the laws, and I am allowed to be in here, and I have every right to be in here as you do, or as anybody else. And so he stopped talking. And so I sat down and ate my meal. There was probably 9 people that were standing here eating their meals. And he did this in front of all of these people. And so I waited for everybody to leave, and I walked up to the cashier and I said, "Can you please get your manager out here, and along with the entire staff?" And they're like, "Okay." At this time I was 22. And so they're like, "Who's
Full of it.
this girl?" Right? And I told him, I said, I'm the trainer for this dog. I'm not a handler, but you don't know that. You could have potentially, like, this dog could have been a reason why I'm able to go out in public, because I could have anxiety issues. You could have sent me into a panic attack. You could have sent me to the hospital. You don't know. He's like, "Well, there's people out there that lie about him, but I'm not one of those."
Yeah.
So I know the laws. I know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do, and we're not doing anything wrong. So he pretty quickly backpedaled and apologized. And so I told him what he needed to research, and I said, if there's any questions, I am more than happy to come in here and educate your staff on what to look for, and what is allowed to be asked and what's not. Because that right there could have had a huge lawsuit if it had been somebody that was not prepared to answer those questions.
Yeah.
It is very, very, it's terrifying, because you don't know what's going to happen when you go out in public with your service dog.
You just don't. And that's, I mean, that's a shame. I hate to hear
Yeah.
that, but that's reality. And
Right.
that's, I think, just, frankly, it's ignorance on people's part that they just don't understand that. And I mean, and that's a good example of going into a space and to a workplace, and the folks don't understand, what that's all about, why it's okay, and really how to accommodate it.
Right.
Maybe it's just not acknowledging it. It could just be part of what, you don't need the extra attention. It just doesn't need to be this big conversation. What do you think are some other ways, as you look into going into, more of an office setting or a workplace setting like that? What are some things, that we can do, as a company or as leadership, can we do, to make that more accommodating, to make, handlers and their dogs more welcome into a workplace? They may prepare, the other employees and the staff, to understand, like, don't ask questions, or,
Right.
know some boundaries, but, beyond that, what are some great ways to be able to welcome, those folks into the space? either, physically into the space, or are there processes or educations or, just kind of some awareness that would be helpful, to do, either before you hire someone, with a disability,
Yeah.
as a dog. What are just some things that we can be thinking about, as leaders, business owners,
Yeah.
and as fellow employees, frankly?
Right. I think the biggest thing is education, is just making sure that as employers, you know what your rights are, but also you know what the rights are of your employees. And you are required by law, it's 15 employees and up, that you are required to give a certain level of accommodation, right, to individuals that are needing additional assistance for whatever their disabilities are, right? So making sure that, and an employer you can't turn somebody away for a service dog. Of course, you can ask more questions. It's not the same thing as going out in a public place. As an employer, you can ask more questions.
Sure.
I don't know the specifics of the questions that you can ask, but you can dig a little bit deeper as far as, okay, well, what do I need to know? Do you have epilepsy? Do you have a heart condition that I need to know about? What can I expect of your dog when tasking is needed?
Right.
Those are all questions that.
What's the task the dog is going to take?
Right,
for you?
exactly. And how does that play out? Are you going to need an ambulance? Will you just need time? If you have an episode, and whatever that episode is, what do I need to know going into that, and how can I help you? Okay, if that happens, what do I need to do with your dog? If you are unable to work with your dog and handle, then what do I need to do? Or what does, maybe assigning a buddy, and that buddy helps. But service dogs are allowed to ride in the ambulance. So, but those are things that are important to share with the people not only the people that are at work, but with family and friends.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't talk about that. A lot of people don't ask. They're scared. They're terrified. Like, I don't want to overstep. I don't want to ask too many questions. But for the most part, from what I've learned working with people that have different disabilities, is they want to educate. They might be scared to educate out of fear of being judged.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, they want people to understand them. They don't want them to be, they don't want to be judged for the things that they're experiencing, but to have a level of understanding that's really important. So education would be number one. And then also making sure that it's practical, and that you guys have talked through the steps of what to expect with the specific disabilities, especially when it comes to a service dog, because the people around you need to know how to care for you and your dog when those situations come up.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think part of that is understanding that it's probably not as scary as it sounds either. It
Yeah.
is another level of effort that you might have to go through for an employee, and I think that scares a lot of people too. Well,
Right.
oh, it's just too much, then first of all, I don't understand it. And second of all, that's a lot, to take on. But I think we as companies and employers, we miss out on some really brilliant minds and some really great,
Yeah.
employees, by, maybe shying away, and I know, I'm not saying we're discriminating against, but, I think that there's definitely some challenges that are worth taking on, to get some of the, of the thought processes and innovation, that some of these folks can offer. I think
Right.
it's just giving more opportunity in general, right? Is there anything in the space, aside from just being awareness and education, is there anything in spaces you can think that would be, helpful? Or there, because dogs can be messy. Let's face it, they got to
Yeah.
go to the bathroom. There's different things that they're going to need to do. But let's face it, a lot of employers are dog friendly already,
Right.
so is there a difference? Is there, some additional things that might go beyond just having, an awareness of a dog in a space
Right.
as it pertains to, the disability and how they navigate the space? Are there areas that they need for, refuge or, rest or,
Absolutely.
so tell us just a minute about that, and just having a dog in a space, because it's challenging, and
Right.
it's not for everyone either.
Absolutely. No, and I think something that's not thought about is well, just like us, we need to make sure that we have things to take care of ourselves throughout the day. Dogs are going to need that too. So there's going to have to be a space where the dog can go and relieve themselves. There's going to have to be a space where the dog can lay down. You know, if somebody's at a desk, it would be really awesome to be able to have a gate or a door so that the employee can focus on their work and the dog can adjust throughout the day and make sure that they're comfortable. And I do appreciate the fact that there are employers that are making the space more dog friendly and letting people bring their dogs to work, because then that means the employee is going to be focused on their work.
Yeah.
They're not going to be like, oh man, my dog's been in the kennel for 8 hours. I need to get home. Like, I'm not staying after. So I think that there's a lot of positive and just benefits in general to not only just service dogs, but dogs in the workplace in general.
I agree.
Yeah.
What have you seen to be the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge would be people, for sure. It's just getting them to understand and educating on the fact that just because you think something is a certain way doesn't mean that that's the way, right? So just because you think dogs, you know, or just because you think that a service dog has to have a vest, or a service dog has to have an identification card, because they don't at all, doesn't mean that that's the law. Like, a lot of people tend to think that, oh, well, the things that I think are the law.
Sure.
That's not the case at all.
That never happens.
No,
we never believe things that we only
no. So, and I mean, that's in general. That's not just within the workplace. That's most of a service dog handler's day, is just navigating the different people that think that they know, but they don't actually know.
Exhausting that must be. Like, I'm just trying to live my life and let my dog help me get through the things I need help with. And I'm so busy just trying to mitigate other people's own
Exactly. It makes it very,
misconceptions.
I mean, in the end, it ends up being, in a lot of people that I've talked to, it ends up being a question. Okay, do I want to take my dog today and deal with that? Or do I just want to try and get through my day without all of that, without my dog? So they end up having to make those decisions based on the general public rather than their own personal needs.
Rather than just, yeah, getting
Exactly.
the help that they need throughout the day.
Right. Well, I mean, it takes, like when I would take my dog Boots out when I was his puppy raiser, it takes an additional 20 minutes to just get in and out of the store, because people are constantly, oh my gosh, he's so cute. Oh my gosh, can I pet him? Like, people are very entitled when it comes to dogs, and a lot of them can't read. Like the vest, it says don't touch.
Don't touch.
Yeah, or don't pet or whatever. They don't read. So you have to also block for your dog. You have to go out of your way. Like, there's a level of inconvenience that comes with being a service dog handler.
I think some people just think they're the exception. Oh, I see that I'm not supposed to pet, but surely I can. I'm a dog person.
I am able.
I can do that. Oh, that's really, I mean, that's really frustrating. And I think that's that's definitely, something that I would like to get more awareness out there, is that I'm going to say this very generally, and how we're reacting to that are really a detriment to, this person's interaction with community and life in general. And that shouldn't be that way. I mean, I think everybody's the judge, everybody's a critic, but I think, the more awareness that we can keep, having these conversations and talking about this, and it's not that scary, we can figure out ways to have better spaces and to have better policies around that. And it absolutely starts with the awareness of this. Are there any other misconceptions you think that we should address for service dogs or folks with disabilities in general that you just have personally experienced in your life that you feel like is worth sharing?
I think one of the biggest that I've noticed is that they're people. At the end of the day, they are still people. They still want to be loved. They still want to be heard. But they get a lot of looks. They get a lot of judgment. Adding a dog into it makes it even scarier, because then that puts even bigger target on their back.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful to see the fact that as a society, I notice a shift into being more accepting
Good.
and being more understanding and more helpful, instead of just seeing somebody that's different and, turning your back to them, which I've seen as well. So, being on the helping side of that, you hear a lot of horror stories. You hear a lot of just like, what is wrong with humanity? Like, this is absolutely insane. So, just remembering that people are people,
Yeah.
just be human, be kind.
It's a really good reminder. I think all
Yeah.
of us need most of the time. And I will say, as that translates into, employer-employee relationships too, it's just a very simple reminder. We just, those are people. They're just, the other opportunity to add to the culture and the community. And I think we can do a lot better. I think we can be
Yes.
better at accepting and welcoming those folks and their dogs, their beautiful, cute medical equipment, fluffy. um, well, I love that. And I know we kind of bounced around and touched on a lot of things, but I think it's really just kind of getting a big, just general awareness out there right now. And then also, I think, employers and leadership, they should know that there is help for them. They could contact an organization like yours, or, find a resource that can help come in and do that education for their folks and for them. Maybe they just need, reassurance that this is not scary. We can do this. We can actually be better, at this. Um, but also, you are looking at even bigger things. So I want to hear, as we wrap up, a little bit more about the foundation that you guys have found, this passion project that you're working on. So not only are you training dogs, and now you're going back into the service dog arena, you have such a passion for folks with disabilities in general, and then it gets even more specific. So tell me about that.
Absolutely. I mean, my entire life has been about helping people. So going from working, so I'm prior Coast Guard, I'm prior military.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. My unit actually had a station mascot. So being at a search and rescue station, we ended up having a mascot. We're first responders, so we see a lot of devastation, right? So watching the effects that this little black lab had on these people that were experiencing like the worst day of their lives, but being able to watch that she brought just a little bit of sunshine and made them smile, it was just, I'm like, that's what I'm supposed to do. Like, whatever that is, I want that for the rest of my life. So getting into service dog work and then getting into obedience and running a business, and I'm involved in a lot of different groups. It's come to this passion project where we're opening and launching this Revive Canine Foundation, where we'll be training service dogs for kids with autism and veterans as well. So my partner, he's a board certified behavior analyst, and he's opening his ABA clinic. And what that is it's a type of therapy that offers training essentially to and teaching to these children that are diagnosed, that gives them communication skills and functional skills, and it just helps them be more successful and independent.
Sure.
So with his background and what he knows, we realized between the two of us, wow, we could train this service dog and then also use the therapy that he provides to introduce and implement a service dog into a household way easier, and making sure that everybody's on the same page, that we wouldn't have been able to do before.
Yeah.
So being able to implement a service dog while also being able to offer specific therapies so that we are successful, it's one of those, as we've told people about it, and it ignites a passion in themselves. So it's really cool to see that something that we came up with, people feel very deeply about.
Yeah.
So right now we've recruited our board. We've finalized our board. We have a board of 7. It is a team. I'm thrilled with every single person that has.
Congratulations.
I know. Every single person that is now sitting on the board has just a incredible experience that they bring to the table, and they all complement each other. So it's going to be a team that's going to work beautifully. Right now we're doing the nonprofit paperwork, which is extensive,
I can imagine.
and navigating that is a lot. But once that's done, then we'll be able to move forward with fundraising. We're trying to find a property that's local to the area, Tampa Bay area, I'd say between St. Pete down towards Sarasota, where we would have between 5 and 10 acres of a facility where we bring in dogs, train them up, and then place them with their handlers. So really excited about it. There are a lot of moving parts to something like that, but it's cool to see the individuals that are coming forward and the different people that specialize in, you know, all kinds of different occupations that are like, yes, how do I get involved? I want to get involved. So it's been amazing. It's definitely something where in the past probably 2 years we've gotten a lot of resistance in the directions that we were going, and now we're getting to the point where there's not as much resistance and there's more and more opportunities. So it's been awesome.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think maybe what's helping is, there are more cases coming up, there are more diagnoses. I think it's starting to become a bigger conversation, and a much more open conversation. It's like, oh, my sister, my brother, my son, everybody I feel like has somebody very close to them, that's challenged, with some disability, or another. And so I think then you get these people who are passionate about, well, yeah, I want to help so and so. And so by this, helping this program, I mean, and you guys have extensive vision for creating an actual community too at some point, right? And
Our 10-year goal.
yes, that's exciting. Well,
Yeah.
you can share more of that later if you'd like, and
Absolutely.
keep that. But I'm so happy for you, and getting the foundation going, and that's exciting. The board, I mean, that's a huge step. And I did see the list of your board. And that's very exciting and some very, very good people, I think, to be advising you guys on
Yeah.
everything. And I so appreciate you and Eve coming in. And I expected her to be much more entertaining, but evidently we wore her out before we started.
It's toasty in here, so it's nap time.
But I'm so glad you came, and I hope that this is helpful, for at least a handful of people who just have questions or don't understand or just need a little bit more information. And we'll definitely share how to get in touch with you, even if you just need a good dog trainer. I mean, that's at your core, that's what you're really capable of. And then just getting into some more of these conversations about disabilities and how we can overcome some of these challenges in the community. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Good luck, and we'll be
I
checking
know I've
in.
enjoyed it. She's enjoyed nap time.
Well, thank you so much. You ready to take a nap now? Okay. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. I know we had fun with Eve and Coreena here. We'll give you some more information in the show notes. Make sure you share with a friend so we can keep bringing you some great content. And we'll make sure that you can get connected with Coreena and her team if you just need a really good dog trainer, or if you need some service dog training or would like to be involved in their foundation. Thanks for joining. We'll see you again soon.